Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mega Lounge. And here's your host, Christopher Engman.
Great, Neil, to have you here in Sweden, from outside of New York, and also from California.
Chris, I'm really happy to be here. It's wonderful to travel to Sweden again.
Good, but you've been here before.
I have, yes. 20 years ago, I had a girlfriend in Sweden and had the opportunity to spend almost half a year here over the course of our relationship.
Right.
So it's fun to be in Stockholm. It was wonderful to see the Orpheus statue in front of the Operahuset.
Yeah.
That just brought me back, a long way.
Flashbacks.
Seeing that again. Yeah, it really was wonderful.
But you and I met like 13 years ago in San Francisco at a dinner after a campus marketing event.
At Ghirardelli Square, looking out over the water.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was a beautiful, wonderful location. And I do remember the table of Swedes that I saw from far away.
But you actually came over saying, are you the Swedes? Something like that. Is that correct?
When I see Swedish people, I'll just charge right over and say hi in Swedish.
And you start to throw over some Swedish words.
It's been fun. Yeah. I hear Swedish everywhere I've been, all over the world.
Yeah.
And so it is always really fun to just say hi to Swedish people, a Swedish family or a group of young people traveling. They're always really surprised. Being in Sweden 20 years ago, it was impressive to see what is happening here in Sweden with sustainability, with technology, with the impact that this small country has had all over the world. I think this is a really special place.
Maybe we can't beat Silicon Valley in software. We're kind of top 3 in the world. But Sweden, Germany, and Switzerland are top 3 in the world in hardware, like industrial machinery. And Sweden has the highest penetration of green capital in the world per capita. So Sweden is very suitable for green scale-ups, both from the base of people and their knowledges, and also from the capital structure and the political system. It's a pretty good place, kind of the green Silicon Valley, if you want.
Well, I enjoyed, the idea that we're bringing Silicon Valley together with the energy industry.
Yeah.
And in this environment, bringing a little bit of Hollywood to make it all work.
Yeah.
This is the modern way that we will do large deals, is bringing the Silicon Valley agile mindset to the old, slow-moving energy sector, but that is so fundamental to civilization.
Yeah.
And with the twist of being digital and using the media like this, it's the strategy of the future.
You recently joined us. Why did you join us?
I do admire Sweden, and I've admired your work in particular as a Swedish entrepreneur.
Likewise.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to see you in the United States so much. It was as if you were, one of us in the Valley. So I've always admired that mindset that is that Swedish global trade mindset. I'm here because I believe that my experience is probably very similar to a lot of our audience. And that is, I was a lone salesperson who was building businesses, doing everything in a very analog, hand-to-hand kind of way, taking on the weight of responsibility for building many organizations and to take those companies to market. And when
like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, as Bora used to say.
Yes, indeed. I was that Bruce Willis, sweating, my clothes torn after, pushing the rock up the hill, bleeding out of, the top of my head a little bit. When I read the Mega Deals book, I was surprised to see that finally someone was putting into words what I had experienced personally. And that is like, there's a segment of large deals that hasn't really been well covered, even in the work that I was doing.
Been a bit of mystery around it.
Mystery, definitely a lack of attention, given the American view. We've taken a very technology-centric point of view. I happened to see Scott Brinker's martech chart that just came out.
It's a clutter.
There's 9,000 vendors across 8 categories. Yeah. That's a very complicated decision-making process that my friends in now that are CMOs and heads of sales across a wide variety of organizations, that's a very difficult environment to make a choice within. Americans are very technology-centric, like you said.
the answer is often a tech stack. Well, have you thought about why that is?
In the corporate environment, people are changing jobs every 2 years, generally. Given the amount of money that's pouring in and all the new companies that are coming in, there's always opportunities for people to move. So a lot of the times, individuals are making technology investments, and that is providing a window of time. And what I've come to realize, if you start to look at the executive team, the CEO, the head of sales, and the head of marketing, just to keep it really simple, if you look at everybody's tenure, CEOs stay a relatively longer period of time than the head of sales and the head of marketing. But if you look at everybody's tenures, they're offset a little bit. And where the challenge comes in is that, like, it's not the tenure of one individual. The average tenure of a CMO is about 2 years in Silicon Valley,
super short.
right? The tenure of a head of sales might be 2 years as well, the tenure of a CEO, but they're offset. So that means there's radical change in the executive ranks every 6 months, which means a lot of chaos for the people trying to do the work, to actually execute the work on top of the process, on top of the tools. So tool buying has become a convenient way to be busy more than actually drive the strategy, because the strategy is changing a lot given the way talent is moving around.
There's a new religion being brought in by the new executives, and
that happens pretty frequently, and it's very challenging. I mean, for the director level and the folks in marketing operations and sales operations that are supporting these engines, it's really challenging. So buying technology is one way to adapt to that new mandate, to take that new head of sales stack and put it into play. That's like a common thing that we do.
Yeah, we actually lost a deal in the US where they said, no, we can't start to operate this. We need to spend the first half year getting the tech stack, and we were like, okay. My learning from being an entrepreneur is that you start to do things and then you gradually cement the road underneath you, depending on what works and not. You don't cement the road first and then you start to elaborate.
You've built software. I've had the great fortune of being with great teams that have built software. And what I've learned is that software is always somebody else's process. And that process, in my experience, it starts off on a napkin. A design.
It's like fully manual, then it's less and less, gradually less and less manual. Like Expedia. They had like 2,000 employees doing everything under the site manually until they started to build software and automating processes.
Chris, we're here to invite the executive community into the conversation about mega deals. We're building a community of like-minded executives who are curious, that want to learn, like we're out learning in the field with our customers, to learn faster about this highly concentrated and risky aspect of the business-to-business enterprise. And that is our largest deals, what works, what doesn't work, who's doing great work, and how can we improve ourselves in terms of where our most revenue for our business comes from. A handful of customers managed by a handful of our reps. That is an enormous proportion of our overall revenues. When I realized...
And an even bigger part of the profit normally.
When I realized that, when you shared that with me and really helped me get clear, it took me a while to really crack through. Well, what is a mega deal? When you shared with me that concentration of revenue in a small number of accounts, concentration of revenue being managed by a very small number of individuals inside the company, the light bulb really went off. Like, there's major risk here, and there's an enormous market opportunity for us to be sharing what you've learned over the last 4 years with more and more people.
And even though we've spent quite a few years in the mega deal space, doing the research and everything, written the book, working with clients every day, we will never be fully taught on the topic. It's just so vast, has so many layers, but at least I think we've gotten stronger glasses.
And that's the real value of community at the end of the day. We've seen a lot of communities being built. In fact, there's a whole enormous group of people that are talking about community as the new strategy. What we're talking about here in the Mega Deals community is a place for rainmakers and for CXOs, CEOs, chief operating officers, chief revenue officers, chief marketing officers, a place to come and
wannabe rainmakers.
And wannabe rainmakers, and the rainmakers that are out there in the world that may be looking for new opportunities or looking for ways to work with other rainmakers to get into big accounts that they're all working with that aren't competitive. This is an opportunity for us to create a tremendous amount of value with very little time commitment on behalf of our participants in our community. So the invite is, come join us. We'll all be talking more about what's working out there in the world. And we'll skip the long format presentations. We'll be having group discussions, even peer-to-peer discussions that we'll be putting people together to matchmake around, because we want to learn from that group and we want to accelerate this discussion.
To share
this matters
what we know,
a lot.
Learn more.
And one twist to that is our focus on the sustainability space. In the United States, there's a tremendous shift in energy, in motion, in legislation, in financing towards accelerating the green evolution, the no carbon economy. So business to business sales and marketing in the SaaS space is very exciting. But as we've talked about, wow, how much fun it's going to be a huge part in the fast evolution happening in the States around this energy transition. I'm committed, and I know you are, to be a big cause in that matter. And it's really exciting, the conversations that we're already having in the United States, to put the pedal to the floor in an electric car.
Or an electric truck.
Or an electric truck to accelerate that conversation is really personally very fulfilling and meaningful, as well as this is going to be a very exciting commercial opportunity.
Totally.
Chris, what is a mega deal?
So in the book and in the hypothesis of creating the research and the book, we thought it had to do with a threshold of a dollar amount. So we actually talked about deals that were $10 million and above. And we looked at deals that were $10 million to, I think the largest was, I should know this by heart, but a crazy amount, like $57 billion, something like, astronomical. We looked at deals in that range. But we've actually come to the conclusion, it is not a dollar amount, really. We have a list of criteria that rather explains when you have to move from classic sales and marketing into orchestration.
The initial hypothesis was what this was all about: deal size, dollar volume. And I'll offer that that's a very seller-centric approach. We talk about being buyer-centric. Well, being a mega dealer is more customer-centric in the sense of it's not about the dollar amount from me as the seller. It's really about the considerations and the decision process that the customer is going through that creates deal complexity. They have offices in many locations. They have many product groups in many cases. And that's not a huge company. That could be a $50 million company you're selling into.
A few hundred employees are easily on that level.
So you have that complexity in terms of the organizational structure to begin with. And they're in multiple offices, probably spread at least in a couple of regions, if not all around the world, right? So that's the first piece of it. Now, you may be communicating across the organization to sell your enterprise deal.
To many functional areas, for example.
To say, for instance, you're selling to IT, you have to talk to operations, you have to talk to the legal team, you may be dealing with selling and marketing products, et cetera, as well. So that's the sort of the horizontal cross-functional complexity. Then you add the hierarchical complexity. Sometimes the board is involved. Now more and more, given the macroeconomic environment that we're in here summer 2022, CEOs are looking more closely at how spend is being allocated. So now
they're reducing the sign-off levels, which is popping deals higher up in the organization.
Absolutely. So you have the added complexity of the hierarchies. We would sell to the staff, who would sell to the executive management internally.
And that's easy.
That sell to the executive management into the board. So you've got that vertical complexity across the hierarchy. And then the customer, of course, has an environment, a stack of some sort of processes and tools that we're going to have to get to understand so that we can work with them. And then, of course, our solution probably plugs into one or more or influences those processes or those tools. So you add that all up, you have 5 dimensions of really, really serious complexity on the buyer side. And that's, again, what we're helping folks to navigate, to understand, start to diagnose their own environments that they're selling into, and to help to clear up like how we go from the traditional marketing then selling approach to dealing with that complexity to working from selling and marketing working in concert really, really closely, account by account, week by week, in terms of what's happening in terms of our go-to market commercialization rather than all these disparate functions.
And the answer is not to throw in an ABM campaign. That's a too simple answer.
I think we saw a lot of spend on technology in the hopes that it would solve that challenge. But it's been many, many years, and I'm not sure if that impact has been widely felt. There are a lot of companies doing a lot of incredible work with the tools in ABM, but it's not addressing this rainmaker dependency, and it's not addressing how sales and marketing work together as one team to drive these large deals.
One thing we often see is that companies are applying one way of running marketing and one way of running sales across the business, regardless of looking at the business logic. So whether it's a transactional deal with the SMB clients or a complex deal in the kind of mid space or a mega deals, they use the same process and the same tools, the same methods. Luckily, we agree with people like Cross and DeCassa, Mark Organ and those guys. So we all agree on when you move upstream. So when you go into the matrix organizations, and they appear already when there are a few hundred employees, you become a matrix with several offices, several countries, business units, etc. And obviously above that, you need to shift from a sequential marketing then sales into marketing and sales orchestration. So one of the things we strongly recommend is to do the inbound marketing, big search volumes, form fills, demos, etc., and an inside sales model with SDRs, etc. But for your larger accounts, you need different methods because it's a different beast, it's a different sport. So companies need to understand that you can mix models. So for your SMB teams, use inbound marketing and inside sales. For your large accounts, use mega deals, both on the sales and marketing side. What's your take on this?
It's really interesting that the martech tools community has evolved out of the consumer marketing and has brought that mindset into that lower level of traditional marketing in terms of the volume-based approach. What you're sharing with is that evolution out of the V-shaped funnel, the inbound form fill to shopping cart conversion sort of mindset that does exist, and there's a place for it, totally. Especially in like the freemium model in the B2B space, right? That's where you land.
Apps, etc.
Right, you land and then you sell a department and you sell a larger group and then you sell the enterprise. A lot of companies have evolved into the space and grown very fast, taking that approach. So there's a view that works, right? And now a lot of us have run up against, we build it and they don't come. There's another approach that the more sophisticated B2B martech vendors and marketing operations and demand gen community has evolved into. ABM has evolved out of that, but it's really taking more of that tool-centric approach versus a process-centric approach. And, it's really understandable from the sense that I've gained from working in this community. The VC community has very high expectations of the martech tools that they have funded. If you've looked over the last few years, there's been a shift into the sales tech space from the VC community that 10 years ago funded the martech groups. Now they're funding the sales tech. And that creates behaviors to drive those tools into the corporate community. So the corporate community are our colleagues that have the rainmaker dependency, that do have a huge dependency on large deals. Their attention is focused on the ABM strategy and approaches. The consultants, the advisors, they're talking about ABM and that important thing. If we stop and think about it, for the tools vendors, there's really not a huge business necessarily in chasing the large deal function, so to speak. The sales and marketing organizations working together to sell large deals, while it is the second largest revenue stream in the entire world. For the vendor community, that's only one deal at a time. So it's actually a relatively small revenue from them.
I never thought about that.
So you have that sort of influence of the VC community and all the money flowing into the tools that's affecting our strategy because it's the conversation that we're having.
Just leaving the mega space alone.
Absolutely. And why we're offering that conversation and the welcome into our community to accelerate this conversation, because it's very important and very strategic, not only for our CEO, of course, for our head of sales, but also for the head of marketing. This is an enormous opportunity for the head of marketing to have a real seat at the executive table and at the board level table to be talking about our largest source of revenue for our organization.
Totally. Thank you, Neil, for the conversation. As always, insightful, warm, fun, inspiring.
Chris, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to visit.